President Biden seeking to send an additional $24 billion taxpayer dollars to Ukraine as he tries to rally other world leaders at the UN for their support. Retired Lieutenant Colonel Dan Davis wrote in a Newsweek article this week that Washington has spent nearly $113 billion over the course of this war, provided Ukraine with an astounding volume of modern arms and ammunition, and delivered an impressive array of training and intelligence support. After almost a year of preparation, he wrote, it hardly dented the Russian lines. And senior fellow at Defense Priorities and retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis joining us this morning with more on this. Good morning to you, sir. President Biden pledged yesterday to help Ukraine for, quote, as long as it takes. But if Ukraine is hardly denting Russian lines, what are we doing? Why do you think we're sending billions more on top of the $113 billion here? What is the end game?
Well, you know, that question got even more cloudy yesterday. While everybody was naturally focused at the United Nations, a maybe even more important quote was given by the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in Germany at a meeting where he elaborated on that objective that said, we will support Ukraine for as long as it takes, and the objective is the complete freedom and eradication of Russian forces from Ukraine, which is, you know, a much higher standard. And again, when you look at the facts of just what has been accomplished after the provision of so much money, weapons, arms, training, intelligence, all of those things that you just mentioned, and yet virtually no change in the lines after a half year of preparation. And now that the Ukraine side is openly talking about, well, now we're going to prepare for a spring 2024 offensive. But you have to ask, if this one didn't succeed, on what basis would they think that one's going to, when Russia will have yet another half year to prepare for that one if they don't launch a surprising offensive of their own, which is entirely possible. But the bottom line is there is no stated end objective for the United States of how they're going to accomplish that objective, the complete freedom.
So you said it's time to acknowledge objective reality and employ policies that can work. So what is the solution?
Look, you have to say, you know, if the full rejection of Russian troops from Ukraine is not possible, what is possible? And what is possible is to try to come to some kind of a negotiated settlement that does cede some territory, because that is possible. And Zelensky continues, he did on 60 Minutes on Sunday, to categorically reject that as a possibility. But here's the problem with that. What that leaves then is the de facto, then the country will continue to get attacked, destroyed, their people killed, and their cities wiped off the face of the map, as Zelensky mentioned in his comments yesterday. There's no path to change that. And unless they're going to recognize that reality, that's what's going to continue.
The president also said if we allow Ukraine to be carved up, is the independence of any nation secure? I want to know what your response is to that, but also listening to you talk right now, when you hear and see both sides to this, you kind of go, are we going to war? What's happening here?
Well, look, I mean, everybody says no. The President Biden, again, said it's not in our interest to go to war with Russia. We want to prevent that. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff echoed that again yesterday as well. But then we talk about continuing on to do this. So the question comes in there, what is our objective? What can we accomplish for the American people? We can't just say we're going to go on forever and yet have no plan how to get there. And to try to avoid that, because the longer the war goes, the longer the risk that an accident, miscalculation, or just some mistake causes the thing to expand. And of course, you know that could potentially include nuclear weapons. So it is definitely not in our interest to even play around with that.
And to your point, you just mentioned that they explained what the objective is, right? That the objective is a free country.
Right. Yeah, but there's no path to get there. They don't say, and here's how we could realistically expect to get there. Because you can't go like the German parliament did the other day and say, well, we'll support Ukraine for 9 years to 2032 of all dates. I'm not sure where they came up with that one. But look, what they're not thinking about is the human capital. Yeah. The number of Ukrainian troops keep being killed. And the problem is you can get more tanks, planes, bombs, ammunition, all that. You can't create more people in Ukraine. Every time you lose one, there's less and less people to fight the next battle. That's the real problem.
And Colonel, this also comes at a time when the president allowed for $6 billion in frozen Iranian assets to be released in that very controversial prisoner swap. And U.S. officials have said Iran is not only providing weapons to Russia, but also built a plant to manufacture them. So what did you make of this?
Well, look, it's always a tricky situation when you want to try to get American citizens back and it's always a thorny issue. Do you, basically give away something that the other side wants in order to get something back? But what this does is it really exposes one of the bigger problems with our foreign policy, is that when all we ever do is sanction people, threaten them, or not even talk to them, then we have no influence, and we have no ability to actually have negotiated discussions where we can get things back in a diplomatic way. And then you're left with something like this, to where we have to give some financial considerations, and of course we say that there are guardrails for that money, but when money starts
there's no
flowing, it's
guardrail.
always hard to
What's
do
the
that.
guardrail? What's the guard? How would the U.S. enforce it? How would they even track it?
Well, the government claims that they're going to, but that's what I say. But when it comes to reality, that usually doesn't happen. Once the headlines are going and people move on to the next, and that money goes who knows where.
Senior fellow at Defense Priorities and retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. Always a pleasure to talk to you and get your expertise.
Thanks, Jan.
Thank you for joining us and for your service to our country, sir.
Thank you.